strategies. So let me tell you the purpose of today's PD. It has two purposes. One, we're going to practice using engagement strategies to dive into our DEI book. Number two, we're going to identify the criteria for success for some of these engagement strategies so we can implement them in our upcoming lessons. And you can see our agenda on the wall. All of our goals today are about equity, so we keep equity at the forefront of the conversation. Because I want to make sure each and every classroom has a high quality teacher in front of them, delivering high quality instruction. So for some of you, the goal is for you to learn something new to put in your teacher's toolbox. For some of you, it may be just to remind you of the criteria for success for some of the strategies that you already know so that you can pull it out in your teacher toolbox. And lastly, for some of you, it's going to affirm some of the current practices you're already doing so that you can become a model for others in some of our strategies. I'm going to be toggling between two hats. You'll see me talk a little bit about engagement strategies at work, and you're going to see me talk a little bit about for white folks and teaching the hood and the rest of y'all too. Now, don't worry if you haven't read the book. It will not stop you from engaging in today's session. But it's my hope that you will definitely continue to read the text after today, that today's text inspires you to continue reading. So if you have not started reading the book, please start. And if you have not finished, please continue. Because we want to make sure that we have all of the tools that we need to dive into this work that we call DEI. All right, so the first strategy I'm going to introduce is a turn to talk. Can I have someone who has taught less than 3 years read the purpose of a turn to talk?
To jumpstart engagement, lock in knowledge, develop and refine ideas.
Thank you. All right, so if you look at that learning pyramid, it's also in your handout on page 2. You will notice that scholars retain what percent when they teach others? 90%. The learning pyramid tells us that scholars, the average scholar will retain 90% of what they learn when we give them a chance to teach others. So when we implement turn talks in our classroom, we want to teach some of the basic components of what scholars are to do. Randy, can I have you read what's under participation ratio?
Turn and face my partner. Speak loudly so my partner can hear, but do not distract others. Move my paper in the middle so my partner can see it. Stay on topic the entire time.
All right, so when we talk about participation ratio, these are the moves that we want to incorporate in our turn and talks so that we can have 100% of our scholars participating in the discussion of the lesson. Now we want to add rigor to that. When we add rigor to that, then we take it to think ratio. And with think ratio, we have partner A turn to partner B. They take turns. We can add rigor by asking them to write before they go into the turn and talk so they can hone in on their thoughts and refine their thoughts before sharing. And then we add a lot of rigor when we're asking someone to share what they have heard. Because we know that is a key component of effective communication is listening. And so we are building those skills when we add those strategies for think ratio. Now I like turn talks because they give us ownership of learning. Priority number 2. So what I would like to do is hear from 2 teachers who have been teaching more than 3 years and have used the strategy turn and talk. Yes, to share some classroom management ideas that we think that you found that were helpful when you were implementing turn and talk. And everyone is encouraged to go to page 3 of your handout on their teacher toolbox. You're encouraged to write down something that you hear that resonated with you. So can I have 2 teachers who are teaching more than 3 years give us some classroom management strategies for our newer teachers, or teachers who are not using turn and talk, can you think about before going straight into a turn and talk? I'm sorry, thank you.
To define a task or a goal before they turn and talk.
Say more.
So like when you're saying during this turn and talk, the goal is to understand the motivation of why your partner did what they did. I mean, it's just that's what he's talking about, like to have a goal before,
Have a
so
goal,
they
I
know
like
what
that.
time, what,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing when they do it.
One more teacher who's been doing it for more than 3 years. Thank you, Ms. Clinton.
To establish his goals first.
Establish who goes first. Love that. All right, so this is a quick hit, a little mini intro to Turn and Talk. Now we're gonna do a little bit of DEI work with our Turn and Talk. So I want you to follow me as I read this next text, this excerpt from our book. It says, in schools, urban youth are expected to leave their day-to-day experiences and emotions at the door and assimilate into the culture of the school. This process of personal repression is in itself traumatic and directly impacts what happens in the classroom. One thing that I find that we do as adults well is that our emotional intelligence are very high with other adults. Like I can tell when someone's having a bad day. I can tell when something is weighing on you, and I adjust. I come ask if you're okay, or I may give you your space. But that same emotional intelligence decreases with our scholars who may be experiencing a bad day or having something weighing heavy. So my question is, on yesterday I received, or the other day I received a Slack from a scholar that was sleeping in class. And so I go into the class and I ask the scholar, why are you sleeping? And the scholar said, well, I was out with my mom last night. She got back really late. It was after 11 o'clock. I'm just tired. As she's talking to me, I'm thinking, well, this is not a behavior issue. I've been a latchkey kid. I know what it feels like for your mom to come at 11:30 at night and take you home. So I thought to myself, what could we have done differently? Because we didn't respond with that empathy. We responded immediately, requested assistance for a scholar who was sleeping. So I want to ask, our name for you, we can't let scholars stay asleep. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I want to make sure that we think about it differently. What could we have done better? Maybe inquire about why the scholar was sleeping. Maybe just allow the scholar to stand in the back or go get some water and resume back to the class. So we're going to discuss this excerpt in a turn and talk with your shoulder partner. Whoever has been teaching the longest will be partner A. The other person will be partner B. If you have been teaching the same amount of time, then the person whose name is first in the alphabet will be A. Ms. Vogel, can you tell me how we're going to determine who's partner A and partner B?
Whoever's been teaching the longest.
Thank you. All right, so take 15 seconds to identify who's partner A, who's partner B, go. All right, raise your hand if you're partner A. Raise your hand if you're partner A. A. Raise your hand for partner B. All right. All right, so we're going to begin our turn and talk. Partner A, you will have 1 minute to share out your response to our next question. I'm going to tell you where it is. While partner A is talking, partner B is listening for key details. When my timer goes off, then you'll switch, and then partner B will share their response while partner A will be listening to key details. Before we go on our turn and talk, I want you to reread the excerpt on page 3 in your handout. And then on page 3 in your handout, then take 45 seconds to write a response to the following question. It's on page 3 in your handout. And the question is, how can we as educators ensure scholars are seen for who they are and not for what they do? So you'll take 45 seconds to respond to that question on your paper. life. All right, thank you for those that put your pencils down so that you know you were done and that was not direction I gave you, but that's it. All right, we're gonna take 2 minutes to share our response with our partners. Remember, partner A will go first. When that timer is up, then we'll switch to partner B. After your time talks, I'm gonna call on a few tables to share out. So you're gonna share what you heard. You're gonna share what you heard, so make sure that you are listening. All right, you have 2 minutes, go. All right, you should be switching to partner C. All right, before we go into our reflection, I'm gonna switch hats, remember I'm in 2 hat modes, right? So I'm gonna go back. Hopefully there were some, things that you saw the teacher do when I sent you guys into Turn and Talk that, was under participation ratio and the think ratio. And then thinking about the discussions that you guys had about the DEI work. I want you to flip over to the last page of your handout for a reflection. On the last page, I'm gonna ask you to write down 2 things, one from engagement, from the Turn Talk, and one from the DEI conversation, that you either added to your teacher toolbox. Maybe you're gonna grab something that was in your teacher toolbox, you just need to tweak it and refine it because you haven't been doing it with fidelity. Maybe you're doing it well, you wanna keep it in your toolbox. Or you have a strategy that you use and that you need to remove from your toolbox. I want you to write down 2 things that resonate with you so far from those 2, that engagement strategy and the DEI work. You have 90 seconds to write your reflection. And 2, and 1. So I'm gonna step out of the scene because I wanna point out one thing in that Turn and Talk that I don't know if many of you all noticed. But you know, you don't have an even number of scholars all the time. What do? You don't have an even number of scholars when you wanna go into a Turn and Talk. If you notice, Erin was hanging off, so I made sure that I went over there to make sure that she could still actively engage in that Turn and Talk. So just wanted to point that out. All right, we're gonna keep moving. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
You made it sound even just great. Sandy, because it was so great. Would you read out the idea?
Yes. When you change how students talk in class, you change the way they think.
All right, y'all. So the only way we know how to get to know our scholars is we let them talk, if we lift their voices. So think about your own classroom.